Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast. For my regular listeners, you know how much I emphasize the importance of taking care of the people side of business. And today you're going to hear from a CEO who has focused on this in her own organization, and she's committed to elevating the human resources profession worldwide. I'm so pleased today to welcome as my guest, Dr. Amy Dufrane. Amy, I'm so glad to have you here.
Meredith, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's going to be such an enlightening conversation, no matter where people are who are listening to what we're saying, whether they are in human resources themselves or not. What we talk about is relevant, no matter what level you are in the organization. If you're a business owner, all of this is going to be so valuable because of your own journey. And I want to before we jump into questions, share a little bit about your vast experience, and then I'll let you fill in the blanks. Amy is actually the CEO of two important organizations tied to human resources. The first is HRCI, which is the world's premier credentialing and learning organization for the human resources profession. And Amy is responsible for guiding this multi-million-dollar enterprise as it provides training that helps companies and their employees navigate the demands of the modern-day workplace and its future. In fact, almost every Fortune 500 company has HRCI-certified professionals among their leadership ranks. Amy's also the CEO of HRSI, which is a subsidiary of HRCI, and it's the world's premier standards and credentialing institute for private and publicly traded organizations. Now, on top of that, Amy is the recipient of numerous awards and honors, including the 2021 and 2022 Top 100 HR Tech Influencers and 2021 Stevie Awards Female Executive of the Year. So, Amy, I know you have vast experience, and you didn't actually start out in human resources, if I remember correctly, in your journey. Tell us a little bit about what led you to leading HRCI today.
Right. So I originally had thought I was going to go into something related to retail, and I loved sort of the component of sort of amazing people. I did an internship at Bloomingdale's, and I was watching the Carol Burnett special last night, and Bob Mackie was on it because Bob Mackie designed a lot of Carol Burnett's things that she wore, and I got to meet Bob Mackie when I was doing my internship, which I loved it. But I did a stint through HR or personnel at the time, and I loved that more. And that's really how I had taken one human resources class in college, and an opportunity opened up in the HR office, and I jumped on it. I said, I want to do this. And that's really how I, sort of entered into HR. And my journey has been working for organizations that are mission and purpose-driven organizations in the education space. I've also worked in regulatory organizations. So I worked for an organization that regulated the municipal securities market as their CHRO, and joined HRCI after this long journey of working in organizations in human resources, and joined HRCI. And I just felt like it's been the pinnacle of my career. I was certified by HRCI long before I joined HRCI, got my SPHR, had to go through the journey of preparing and getting certified. And I taught both HR and business professionals. I have a passion for helping people to, help them be better in whatever it is that they want to do, whether it be HR or business. And all of us as business leaders have to know what great HR looks like. So we're all managing people. We've all got to understand HR. So I really am thrilled about being able to do that. I had to take a little bit of a hiatus from teaching, just because this job is all encompassing. It's a job that I'm on the road a lot, and that in classroom experience, there's nothing better than doing that with students. But I feel like I still get to do that with helping people to get certified and learn more about HR through some of the offerings that we have at HRCI and HRSI. So it's been just a great journey. As I look back, some of the things that I used to do are done technologically in 10 seconds or less, which is, pretty crazy when you think about that. Like, wait, how did that happen? But you just project that forward and you think, gosh, in 30 years, what are some of the things that the future HR professional will be doing? And I can comment on that, but there's all sorts of projections about what the jobs of the future might look like for HR, and they're all so different than what they look like right now. So I think it's just an exciting profession, one that's growing and changing. And I love talking to professionals who say, in HR, I never have the same day. It's never the same day over. And frequently they say, I have this long list of to-dos and I got to none of them this week because, other things happened in our organization that required my focus on, some of the strategic business needs that the organization had. So just an amazing, I think that HR professionals are amazing humans who are really trying to make a difference in their business. And I feel lucky to be able to work with them.
I love your enthusiasm for that. And, thinking about the fact that no 2 days are the same. And of course, it's because we're working with people, not machinery.
That's right. That's right.
The diversity of individuals and the different kinds of challenges that they encounter really do present opportunities for learning and growing within that profession. One of the things I know about you was your enthusiasm in coming to HRCI. I want to kind of drill down and look at you as the leader of that organization. You came in and saw some opportunities for innovation and making some changes. And I know that many of my listeners are often in situations where, whether they've designed those changes or not, there are changes that are happening, and getting buy-in from others is so important. So you have this vision of where you want to go. How did you work with folks there when you first came on board? Well, let's talk about what was your vision? What did you see as the opportunities and possibilities? And then how did you get others to buy in and get behind that?
Right. So when I first joined the organization, I had the vision of really growing HRCI to be more internationally focused. We had historically been, primarily in the U.S. because our certifications were and are for the PHR, SPHR, and now APHR and GPHR are for individuals that are primarily practicing in the United States, although the GPHR, you do have cross-border working, so that from an eligibility perspective. So, but we had several people from outside the United States that were interested in obtaining our certifications, but the alphabet soup of HR made it impossible for them to even comprehend what ADA is, what FMLA is, what FLSA is. What are all these letters, and what do they mean, and how do they apply? And they don't apply if you're practicing HR outside the United States. And so first it was that international growth, and we launched the I series, the APHRI, PHR, SPHRI. That series of certifications for individuals that are practicing outside the US. And we're thrilled because we're seeing growth in that certification space. And along with that is are the things that we've done to support the profession in, I sort of saw us moving into that international space, and how could we bring the international community together? Because HR is HR, no matter where you practice it. Their laws are different, and I get that in different areas across the world, but really, compensation, total rewards, onboarding, retention, culture, all those things are the same when you sort of look at it. And so how can we make sure that we have a common language across the world? And HRCI has long been involved in developing standards for the human resources profession. And several years ago, the opportunity presented itself for HRCI to become the secretariat of TC 260, which is the technical committee that is developing the standards for the human resources profession. And this is a global endeavor. This is not HRCI. We lead it, but we only lead it in that we are bringing together professionals from around the world who are talking about standards and what are the standards that we need. What should we develop? HRCI is not saying what should be developed. It's the global community together that is saying, we should have a standard for diversity and inclusion. And for example, that's just one example. There have been many that have been written and published and are being utilized around the world. So we feel like, this being able to have a common playbook, language that everybody is using, is really advancing us as a profession towards that broader understanding. And I think the pandemic has really illuminated that the world is so flat, right? It's so people are working everywhere. We're hiring people from everywhere. Whether it be, in the gig space, whether it be as a consultant or independent contractor, as an employee, they're everywhere, all over the world. And so how do we make sure that our programs and our processes and our policies are, reflective of that international community that we're all working together in? So I'm really excited about the work that together the technical committee has done, the standards that have been developed. And then, so I could go on about some of the things that we've done. You alluded to or talked about being the founder and the CEO for the Human Resource Standards Institute. And that organization is actually certifying organizations against those standards. So it is a subsidiary of ours. It's related to us, but what the mission of that organization is to do is to really focus on those organizations that are following in those standards that should be applied in diversity and inclusion and human capital reporting, which are the first two standards that we have developed certifications against for organizations. Those are the latest two standards that have been published by TC 260, and those that have gotten the most interest from organizations for each standard for very different reasons. The first one, human capital reporting, being something that the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States is very interested in, because they want metrics in which to report the most important resource on their balance sheet, which is their people, right? How do we make sure that there is some consistent reporting there? and then, of course, diversity and inclusion, which there's been a major push for organizations to have more consistent practices in D&I. There has not been a common playbook for D&I to follow within organizations. So there's been all sorts of, recommendations from professionals on this. And what we have is what the global profession has said. These are the things that a D&I program should entail. And so that's what we're certifying organizations against. We have about 10 organizations that have gone through this so far. So we're really excited about this.
Let me just add real quick.
Yep.
I had interviewed the president of HRSI, as you know, Dr. Denise Caleb, and she was episode 210. So for those that would love to learn more about HRSI, because her enthusiasm matches yours, Amy, for helping organizations really set these standards and meet these standards. And so it's a way of really guiding organizations that are committed to doing the right things around this, all of these areas, diversity, equity, and inclusion, to have these guidelines to build from in creating their programs. So I just wanted to put in a plug for that.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
That's what you're saying so well. And so let me just pause for a moment and think about how many people were working at HRCI when you came on board, and what was involved in sharing this vision with them and getting them as excited as you are about where you saw the potential.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the head count that we had at that point. We were relatively small, maybe 20-ish people. I can't even remember that far back. That's been 12 years ago. Time has changed and moved forward. Yeah. But, I think that when I think back to the launch of our the I series, the APHR, IPHR, SPHR, which was our first toe dip into this. It was really, I think it was getting people involved in it. What I did is put together, I called it a war room, but that's, people said, oh, that sounds so like we're going to war. Like, no, but to really dig in and help people to understand, okay, what are we trying to do here? Why are we doing this? What's the importance of this? And, what are we going to name it? How are we going to name these certifications? How are we going to, we had to do all sorts of, from a certification perspective, to do pre-testing, and we needed to have consistency, and we needed to find partners. And so it was pulling together a team of people to really dig in and to develop and launch this particular product. And we had partners in the space that were helping us to, launch this endeavor. One of the partners that we're super proud of, who was extremely helpful in launching this, was Deloitte. We utilized their global reach, and were able to find HR professionals around the world who were interested in helping us to pilot this initiative. And so, it was really getting everybody on the same sheet of music, and then, having a really well thought out plan, and then work in the plan. That was really how we, achieved success at this. And I think that, so that's just, kind of one example. And another example is we brought on board a CIO who is, a wonderful thinker in all things sort of process and technology and sort of forward looking. And he introduced Agile to our organization. And he led that process. We started small, and we did education and training with a small group of people, and we tested it out. And we said, how could we use this? And we learned, and we tried, and we morphed. And then we cast the net wider, and we trained the entire organization on Agile. And that's how we launched our the initiatives for HRSI, how we do all of our tech processes, how we do everything is, using Agile. So it's having a minimal viable product first. You don't have to have everything built. Try it out, pilot it out, get great feedback, and build on that. And I think that has worked beautifully for us. So, I would say to organizations, it's having a common language that you're operating against when you're launching something. You do education around it. You allow for failure because everything is not going to be successful. It's not going to go the way that you planned. And you're going to learn a ton from going through this process. And so you've got to be open to reframe what you originally thought the end goal was going to look like, because it's not going to look like that. You're going to be constantly changing it and reframing what that end looks like based on sort of, it's like you've got this piece of clay and you put it on the wheel, and then you sort of say, all right, I want this to be a vase, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like in the end. But you're gonna go with how the clay sort of moves itself on the wheel, and you got to be flexible, and you got to hire smart people who are who you trust and who you're excited about, the initiative and the goal, and get the team ready and go, and give people latitude to do what it is that they need to get done.
You're bringing up so many important things that organizations everywhere need now. This willingness to experiment, to try.
That's right.
But I was telling you before we started recording, I just came back from the Virginia State HR conference. And one of the things that I heard from folks is there's sometimes a reluctance to experiment and try things. And it's sometimes difficult to introduce new ideas and get this buy-in, even though the person who's introducing it is very enthusiastic about it. What have you found? You just mentioned a few things, but every culture is not like what you were just describing. How can an individual, no matter what position they have in a company, help move things towards that experimentation, that attitude towards failure that you have, not really seeing it as failure? That's how I'm hearing what you're describing, right, as a learning opportunity, where
right,
then we build on that. So what's really required? What are you seeing from within your own experience building HRCI, but other organizations? What are some of the common things that leaders are doing or individuals are doing?
So communication is key, right? You've got to keep, sort of talk through what it is that you're working on and keeping people apprised of it. And, I liken it on the team. I say, oh, we're building the plane as we're flying it, or we're riding the surfboard right now, and you never know what wave is going to come up next, but you just, you gotta think like a skier, and you gotta, make sure that your knees are ready to absorb those changes that are happening on the mountain. And so I think that communication and that flexibility is so key. From the perspective of failure, I think that organizations need to be talking about like that, the need, the communicating that we reward people who are trying something new and take a risk. Mostly everything except for if you're in the medical field is recoverable, right? Like, you're not doing brain surgery. You can fix things if it doesn't exactly go the way that you want to. So it's making sure that you've got that culture of welcoming change and welcoming people to be more flexible and understanding. And I think that's really important, and instilling the culture of experimentation and being like a scientist in a lab that are trying things out for the first time, and knowing that if something doesn't exactly go the way that you thought it was going to go, that's okay, because you learned something from that. So being able to continue to evolve your thinking and sort of whatever it is that you're working on. I think those are important markers to have in your organization. And I think, from a business perspective, it's talking about, some of the things that you're doing as an organization. Hey, we had some success here. This didn't exactly go the way that we thought it was, but we're going to, we learned from this and we're going to try something different, and we're going to keep going. We're going to keep trying because we think that there's something here, whether it be you're manufacturing something new, you're trying out a new job within an organization. You don't exactly know exactly what it is that you're looking for, the skill sets that you need, but you're going to keep at it because at the core, there's something there. There's something, there's a new product that's waiting to be developed, or, the industry is reacting positively to something that you're doing, but maybe you haven't hit the mark yet. So just keep at that experimentation and asking questions, and, seeking out those people who are sort of experts to give feedback. So I think those are all sort of morsels of wisdom sprinkled throughout all of what I just talked about.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point. No, you're right. It's a combination of elements. And I think it would be so interesting now because of the traveling that you do, the way you interact with so many executives in organizations, as well as those human resources leaders. What are you seeing as the evolution of this profession? First of all, let me just say that the standards and the certifications you're putting in place, to me, parallel what we see in other professions, like the medical profession, law, like CPA. So I love the way this profession is being elevated through the programs, the trainings, and the certifications that are being offered by an organization like yours. I think, though, as my listeners are, kind of opening their minds to what really is possible, I would love for you to share this evolution you're seeing in human resources. What's the ideal in terms of their role in an organization versus maybe what it's been in the past? Maybe contrast those two.
Right. Well, I think that's, fairly easy for me to look backwards on some of the things that were like, wow. I think HR was very transactional, very much, I think here are policies, here are practices. I liken this to Mary Barra's example before she became the CEO for General Motors, part of her development plan was to work in human resources. And when she was in HR, she got in, she was there for a couple of years, but one of the very first things that she did is she read the policy handbook, and she read the dress code, which was pages long on what the dress code, what can't you wear, what should you wear, how do you protect yourself, anyway. And she shortened the dress code to dress appropriately. That's what it became, from pages to simple. And I think that when you look backwards at the profession, I think those multi-page policies were, sort of all the things that HR spent time, on, because managers would have a problem with somebody who came in dressed inappropriately. And then HR, sort of, and attorneys then, turned policies that should have just been simple into something extremely complex. And I think that really, when you think about that and you look forward, CEOs are not looking for HR to write policies that are 29 pages long. They're looking for HR and particularly CHROs to be business partners in moving the business forward from a people perspective. And I think that HR knows the best, the most important resource in the business, and that's their people. They know the skills and competencies that they need. They know the skills and competencies that they're going to need for the future. And that's why CEOs are calling HR in to say, here's this, we want you to be a part of the development of the strategy, not the afterthought, not here's our strategy. Okay. They want to walk arm in arm together in developing strategies so that HR can ensure that the people are ready for the future. You're finding the people of the future. And let's face it, it's hard to find really talented people in some of these technical areas right now because we're not preparing the work that we need in the higher education realm or even in primary education. We're not bringing those skills and competencies forward. And so HR is now faced with, how are we going to develop that? Where are we going to find this talent? And we got to find it somewhere. So we're now thinking about programs, education programs, learning programs, partnering with technical schools, partnering with whomever that we can help us to move things forward. And HR is taking the lead there on moving those efforts forward because the CEO is seeing this as well. Mike Petters is somebody who I sit on the Wall Street Journal CEO Council with, and he talked about, and he's been, you can pick up many of the Wall Street Journal articles, and he is the CEO for the largest shipbuilder. They actually happen to be located here in Virginia, but his wife is a preschool teacher, and so he goes into preschools and is working with kids, getting them excited about shipbuilding because he needs more technical competencies to help him to build these ships, to have him remain competitive as a business. So that's where I see HR moving towards. There was an HBR article talking about some of the jobs of the future for HR, and they're much they're working on how do you bring the machine learning and the people together? Like, what does that look like? I think we're seeing the results of the pandemic. We're having a lot more mental health opportunities for people to seek the care that they need. And so HR's got to play a role in that. And how can we help people from a mental health perspective to be more efficient and balanced in their personal and their professional lives? So there are these new jobs that are emerging based on some of the things that we're seeing that have happened just in our overall macro space. And how are we evolving and thinking about jobs? So I think that those are the things where I see HR moving towards. In some cases and in some areas, they're there right now. In some areas, there's a lot more opportunity, right? I mean, there's still, I don't want to say everyone in HR is at that strategic realm because it's certainly not. There's still transactional HR roles. I don't want to be Pollyannish because I know they exist. But I was recently talking to the CHRO for AbbVie, and I was with 100 HR folks, and we gathered together and we're sort of talking about the HR of the future. And it was a heartwarming experience when the CHRO for AbbVie talked about what they're doing as an organization. And it's a little bit of a long story, but the point is that the internal organization hired the HR team to help us to realign their organization. And they had originally gone to some of the larger consulting firms to help them and potentially partner with them. And the CHRO said, wait, why not us? Why can't we can help you with this? We're the experts here. We know AbbVie better than anybody, inside or outside. We're the experts. And so HR is no longer a cost center. It's actually a revenue center because they were able to provide internal help to the organization that was, it's been life-changing for the organization. Now, I know that's a pharmaceutical company. There's a lot of money there. I get it. HR could be a lot more advanced in some of those larger organizations that have the capability and the deeper expertise. But I think that's where we're moving. And I think that those stories are the stories of the HR of the future. And I think that's exciting. And I think that everyone in HR should aspire to be that business partner. So when the CHRO calls you and, is looking for your expertise, jump on it, get, be that business partner, and help to move the business forward with the expertise that you bring.
Mm-hmm. Love that story. It's so interesting how we can overlook our own internal resources and think, oh, I have to go
That's
outside
right.
for this, instead of asking who within our organization might be able to provide this service for us. I also love the idea of being a profit center and not a cost center. For those who are working in organizations where they are perceived as a cost center, where they don't have that seat at the table yet, where they are really valued for what the potential is that they could be providing, what are some practical, useful ideas for moving in that direction, both for that person in terms of their own beliefs about themselves and what's possible, right? Because before we can ask within the organization to redefine how we are perceived, we have to change how we see ourselves, right?
That's right. That's
and
right.
So I'd love to know, is HRCI helping human resource professionals see themselves and see their roles differently in making those shifts inside their own organizations?
We like to think so. I mean, we're, not only do we have the certifications that folks can take, so we've got it from entry level all the way up to senior level. And obviously at the senior level, it's more, application, sort of experiential focused of your expertise. But we're providing learning opportunities for those individuals. We have two multiplicity of ways that can happen. First is through webinar series that we're doing. We've got a number of webinars that we're doing every week that we're talking about everything from transactional to strategic business areas and everything in between. So I encourage people to join in on those discussions, because those are ways to expand your toolkit, expand your thinking, and get ideas of what is happening in the world around you that you can apply within your organizations. We also have learning. We've got courses for individuals that are aspiring to be a CHRO. We've got, agile training. We've got all sorts of things that are available for individuals. We're doing writing and publishing some research that's out there. We've done research with the Wall Street Journal. We've done research with Inc. We just published, I'm going to be publishing some research that we've done with Drexel University. So we're really looking at, we work with Georgetown University on a variety of different things. So we're really, looking at HR in a very different way. We're creating community for HR people so that you can build your own, sort of portfolio of experts that you have, people in your kitchen cabinet that can help you as you're, dealing with challenges that you need some help and insight with. So I think that those are some of the things that we're doing to move the profession forward. I think there's some really simple things that people can do when you're talking to the CHRO as to, the CEO as the CHRO or the other another senior level HR person, is that you're thinking about the resource, the human capital component of your business. You're thinking about that in terms that will resonate with the person who's hearing you speak, which in this case, the CEO or the CFO, but using things like the HCROI, human capital ROI, very simple formulaic way to demonstrate the ROI of your human capital. There are books, there are publications that are written about that. Dr. Solange Charas has written a book about human capital, and I encourage people to pick that up. It's a great resource for people to use. And I think that those are ways that you can speak the language of who it is that you're talking to so that they can understand some of the challenges that you're faced with when some things are not measurable, right? There are some things in HR that are not measurable, but think about the things that are, and how can you speak to a CEO or a CFO about those measures, and how the investment that you're making in that human capital, what does that mean from an ROI perspective? So the more you invest, the more you have an ROI, and then you can look at your EBITDA and do some correlation there with what that looks like. So I think there's some very strategic ways that HR can look at this, and I think that's a great way to demonstrate value of human capital.
Mm-hmm. And as you were talking, I was also thinking about what you said earlier, working with the local colleges, universities, technical schools. It seems to me if someone in human resources were to approach those higher ed institutions about partnerships and thinking about the kind of shortages that you have in your business, where are resources? I know we can expand, way beyond the local, but starting locally, who would be a feeder? Sort of like you were saying with the shipbuilding, where can we get those feeder potential clients, employees, so that we don't have this shortage of key people that we need? It seems like that would be a huge area where human resources can contribute in a significant way to the organization.
Yes, totally. And I'm dating myself 25 years ago. That's what my dissertation was all about, right? Is that collaboration between higher education and business. And, I wanted to do a collaborative dissertation. Anyway, it's a whole long story, but we looked at this very issue, and I feel like we've made a little bit of progress, but not enough, because we're just seeing these shortages in the necessary talent that we need in order to make us more competitive, not only as a business, but when you think about as a country, we're trying to remain competitive in that space. And if we don't have the talent to be able to do some of the things that will move our businesses forward, then we're gonna fall short. And I think there's a lot of organizations that are investing in developing their own talent just because they're not finding it from some of these institutions. So there's a huge opportunity here for HR to try to bridge that gap. And this is not an overnight. This is not something that, this is a longer term play. It's a strategy for how are you going to find that talent, because you can't generate an engineer overnight, right? You've got to invest, and you've got to find, and you've got to really you got to make your organization attractive to those engineers, right? So that's a whole nother that's another podcast for you. That
well, thinking about that, Amy, it kind of circling back and pulling all the different threads together that we've talked about, this idea of experimenting and looking at what are some ways we could find to attract people here, and having multiple experiments going at one time to see where do you get the greatest traction, and looking at what is the culture we're creating here. Is it something that would attract the people we want to have work here? And that to me is another key area that human resources, because of the focus on people, can contribute ideas about what would an ideal place to work look like in terms of allowing others to grow, so that they have these opportunities to be moved around without having to go necessarily outside. Where are people, especially young folks today, consistently express this desire to not necessarily get promoted, but to be able to expand and grow and learn. And that's where keeping your desired people that are in your workplace already and giving them those opportunities seems like it would make so much sense.
And it's easy to do, right? It's easy to give people those opportunities to grow to grow just inside your organization, you have control of that, and you can move people around to give them those experiences, because otherwise they may go somewhere else, and you don't want to lose those excellent people that you have spent a lot to get there. You've attracted them, you're retaining them, you're cultivating them. So give them this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I just see that as such a key way human resources then can contribute to reducing turnover and the cost savings there, keeping employees who have, enjoyed working there, and you want them to continue working there.
That's
Amy,
right.
I know we could talk for another hour.
We could.
To wrap up, because I just want you to know how much I love and admire your enthusiasm and passion for this, because I think it has such a ripple effect with everyone who comes in contact with HRCI and HRSI. So would you please share with folks how they can connect with you and learn more about both organizations?
Excellent. So HRCI.org, HRSI.org. You can connect with me on amydufrane.com. You can connect with me on Twitter at Amy Dufrane, on Facebook and LinkedIn, the same thing. And all of those organizations are all connected together. So you see from my website, I'm connected to HRCI and HRSI. So so they're all connected together, and I'd love to hear from folks. And if anybody has questions about learning, education, certification, HR, love to hear from them.
I know you would, because you live and breathe it every day, and you're a remarkable human being, and I want to acknowledge
thank you,
the
Meredith.
wonderful work that you're doing and the important impact that through your work there at both organizations, the ripple effect that's having on people within so many organizations that you may never even see because you're not working directly with all of those folks. So thank you for being with me today, Amy. I have so enjoyed this conversation.
So have I. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free Facilitator Guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.